just something we do in our free time, basically to prop up our resume. I'm perfectly willing to finish that game. It actually it's a part of my greater Rykani-verse, which we'll get into probably in a bit. It's a very ambitious project, also in terms of the story, because it talks about the Ascendancy. Don't know how much you read about my stuff, but the Ascendancy is a small organization that's come up several times in different parts of my writings. It is a autocratic, theocratic, basically dictatorship ruling over all of humanity.
Okay. Before we get into that, André, so is this game, I forgot how it's called again, something of freedom.
A Bit of Freedom, that's the working
Bit
title.
of
We're obviously
Freedom.
going to change it before release. Yep.
So is Bit of Freedom somehow related to Rykani?
Yep, it's part of it plays in the same universe. The story is, it's actually very integral to the whole, or the plot that takes place. It's very integral to that sort of stuff.
All right, so for those who do not know, you're the creative mind behind Rykani. Could you please elaborate a little bit more? Present us, introduce us to the world of Rykani.
If you recall, if you haven't watched the podcast we did a bit over a year ago, I think 1.5 years ago, March of last year, I believe, Bruno, I said at the time, well, I have this concept for a sci-fi story, but I didn't really want to elaborate on it. I said, I think at the time even, that I wanted to do a webcomic, but I didn't want to talk about it because basically that got me nowhere. And then we had the BRUCAST, where Bruno also encouraged me to keep going. And well, like 2 or 3 months later, the first page was out. I suddenly had a website, a YouTube channel. I suddenly started streaming, and that's how that whole thing started. It is a very hardcore sci-fi story about a very, very, very interesting species, that being the Rika, which are how do I best describe these? They're space gremlins that don't necessarily like humanity. They're I talked about this in my Rykani-Cast episode 0. Yep. That's basically the... Oh, wait, this is the newest one. This is, yep. Which goes into lores and the basics and the stuff. It's a species that I developed as a... well, they had... during the design of this, I had 2 prime directives. One was to make them cute, which I did. And the other one was to make them interesting. So the story, the entire universe is actually pretty hardcore in its conception and its physics and everything else. Because I'm a huge fan of hardcore sci-fi. If you know the Nuclear Rocket Project, that's a huge compendium of knowledge I can recommend everyone to read if you're interested in physics and sci-fi. And this basically combines all of my interests, of one being, space engineering and the physics behind that, plus some sci-fi concepts that I personally myself haven't seen before. And it talks about... Well, it talks about many things. So the second prime directive behind Rika was making them what I call human incompatible. So they're very humanoid in their appearance, but they're human incompatible, which is something we can get into in a second.
So Rika is the space gremlins.
Yes, they're space gremlins. Yeah.
Okay. I want to see an image because I know how they look like.
Best click just the newest page. You go just to the main page on the website and then C1P26.
1P.
Yep, newest page of the webcomic. I mean, that has one of them, which is Frizz. And that's them.
They're a little bit like furries, right?
People keep talking about that. My retort is usually, well, is Walt Disney a furry? It's Mickey Mouse. I made a mistake when I designed them, because people keep talking about that shit. They weren't designed as such. I just wanted them to be cute. If you watch...
That's not a bad thing, André. People love furries.
Yeah, no, well, it's the fucking... the fucking furry community that I'm concerned about, because those guys are well, not necessarily something you want to associate with, but
Right.
so maybe I should have. I mean, okay, they went through many different designs, and on episode 0 of the Rykani-Cast, I basically talked about the entire design process and how they came to be. But yeah, maybe I should have changed that design a little bit. But
I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean,
well,
it works. I mean, a lot of people love
yeah,
fur.
it works.
So so they are. So go ahead. Go ahead.
So yeah, they're they're basically the main focus point of the story about everything that goes on in the universe. And they're species that, so I already said I wanted them to be human incompatible, which talks about a lot of different things that I've been. So again, if you watch Rykani-Cast episode 0, it goes about how my entire process about all the stories that finally went into the Rykaniverse. And it was about, so you have these different conceptions about what it's going to be like when we meet our first alien species and what those aliens are going to be like. And you have different conceptions. So usually many stories talk about an alien force being hostile, of course. You know, they don't understand us humans, or they don't want us humans around, or they just want to exploit us and our resources, so they just take over. Another conception is that, which is stuff like, well, Mass Effect kind of did it. Well, Mass Effect does it with the Asari, that they're very human-like and they understand us humans and they like us humans, and we kind of just get together. And the Rykani, they're a species that is that's something completely different. It's a species that does